shade beneath trees often comes with thirsty roots and lean soil, but don't let this deter you because there are things that you can do to encourage your plants and also to help them along the way. Stay tuned to the end of the video because I'll be designing a woodland garden for you in real time. First off, we have to know what a woodland garden is. A woodland garden mimics that quiet magic of the forest floor. It's a tapestry of layers, trees that shelter, shrubs that soften, and underplanting that sparkles with color in the shadows. Whether you have a sprawling yard or a small, quiet corner, you can shape a shady retreat that feels both wild and wondrous. When you're creating a woodland garden, you really want to lean into and kind of feel into the mood of the garden, the mood of the space. What feeling do you want to create as you move through your woodland retreat? Because that cottage woodland aesthetic is not so much about the shapes and the structures as it is about the feeling that you have when you're in it. For me, it evokes feelings of coziness, interest, intrigue, whimsy, romance. One of my favorite places in the world is in the redwoods in Northern California, specifically Prairie Creek Redwood State Park. I used to go there all the time when I lived in Northern California. I was just a little bit south of that. And it was just the most magical paradise. I always say in the redwoods that are closer to San Francisco, it's, there are more people than redwoods. And in Prairie Creek, there are just so many more redwoods than people. You can walk for hours on end and not run into a single soul, but your soul is so touched and enveloped in the beauty that surrounds you. So for me, that feeling of enchantment, of curiosity is so present when I like to design woodland gardens. I want to create something that makes you feel at peace, very serene, but also like your eyes can't get full enough. You're constantly hungry for more, for seeing more, experiencing more. A garden really that's of the senses. And that's why my biggest piece of advice, if you're designing a woodland garden, is to really let your heart be the head gardener. Create winding paths, gravel, bark, or moss, maybe even old tree stumps cut and shaping a beautiful meandering thoroughfare through this gorgeous woodland paradise. Tuck in weathered benches beneath the trees, little moments for a respite as you're meandering through this beautiful space. Allow ramblers or climbers, maybe even things like ivy, to scramble through the woodland, maybe sprawling over a stone wall, and allow nature to have a say in the design. For me, what that means is taking the things that grow wild in our area and kind of embracing them as part of this woodland space. So we have so many ferns in this area. I know fern experts, I've interviewed them, and they just go out and really try to find all of the beautiful ferns that are in this area, because locally we have some really incredible rare species of ferns. But on our property we have a lot of common ferns, but they're just gorgeous. The interrupted fern, the Christmas fern. So I like to just gather those, divide them, transplant them into specific spaces in our garden, knowing that they're going to thrive, that they're just going to grow beautifully like these gorgeous fountains of plumes. We also have foxgloves that grow wild for us. A lot of the Shasta daisies that grow wild in this area, the white daisies that grow wild in this area, they'll grow in the shade. We have columbines that have naturalized, not in our garden that we brought in, but just wild ones throughout. We have tons of wild orchids. Obviously, I would never move any of the wild orchids that I've seen, but I have seen beautiful orchids in the wild here. And so just knowing that that's what thrives in this space. That's what thrives in these woodlands, is such a key into what I can plant in my own garden, taking a more common variety, maybe you have an orchid or something, and placing that throughout the borders. Taking the structures and the shapes that are really inspiring to me and just allowing them to freckle the landscape, sparkling out in those darker places. And let's say you just have maybe a shady corner in your backyard. Well, that's a wonderful opportunity just to see the shape and structure of the tree that's there, that's creating the shade. You know, in this way, we can play with nature, play with what's there, and also add our own little spark, our own little painterly strokes into the garden design. Next up, let's talk about the woodland plant palette. These are shade lovers and storytellers. Now here's where all this poetry meets the page. These are the magical plants that thrive in dappled shade, even in dry spots beneath thirsty trees. So one of the first things to consider is ground covers and foliage. So what you want to think about for ground covers is, one of my husband's favorite things is walking through a woodland that has very low planting. So not so many shrubs, but just lots of maybe perennials and self-seeders throughout the space. He even likes a woodland that just has almost just bark or just mulch or just pines, pine straw from the trees above, so that you can really see and feel the forest. And here we get a lot of mist on the mountains. So having that mist kind of coming through the garden is so intensely magical. And when it's not impeded by the shrubs, there is something just very enchanting about that. And that's where ground covers can come in. In our little woodland dining garden, we've planted lots of lamium. We've planted it actually throughout because it does really well in the sun for us as well. But in those darker spaces, the lamium just really shines. It's dead nettle, so it has that beautiful nettle-shaped flower. It's really gorgeous. The bumblebees absolutely love it. It blooms earlier. It stays evergreen for most of the winter, even though we get really quite harsh and cold winters here with lots and lots of snow. And it's just a really beautiful one for those woodland gardens. It's done really well for us at the base of really thirsty trees that are sucking up all the moisture that's there. So it's a fantastic one to consider. Any woodland ground cover that enjoys a dry shade. For us, that's things like epimedium. Sweet woodruff does pretty well once established. And another one that grows wild here for us, the Canadian windflower. That one really loves the drier shade once it's established. And things like brunnera and pulmonaria with their bright zingy foliage, and lily of the valley. Once they're established, they really do enjoy being in that dappled woodland setting. In a cottage garden, I love to plant things kind of spread out. Instead of doing beautiful drifts, I like to sort of sprinkle and pepper the borders through with a repetition of the same perennials and annuals. I think that adds a rhythm and a flow to the garden that really draws you down, and it feels very abundant, but there's always interest in every little nook and cranny. There's different levels of interest if it's designed in a way with that in mind. In woodland gardens, I really love seeing swathes of color, seeing whether that's a beautiful cluster of Hakonokloa, that zingy Japanese forest grass, or the calm, broad leaves of a hosta just splaying out in a border together, all in a swathe of that beautiful soft blues and greens and even some yellows. Brunnera coming together as well with those beautiful daisy-shaped forget-me-not blue flowers in the springtime, and pulmonaria with those gorgeous pink, purple, and blue bell-shaped flowers that bloom earlier than any other perennial for us. Seeing those strokes of color and foliage interest really helps to give you an established established sense of peace, cohesion, and harmony in your darker, shady, or dappled borders. And so intermingled amongst these swathes of foliage interest, I love to add pops of color. So whether that's present in annuals, things like impatiens do really well for us in those situations. The double impatiens are gorgeous, but just any impatiens that you can get, they're just so gorgeous in those settings. Violas do beautifully well. Brawalia is a really gorgeous one for those dappled, shady areas, and particularly a white Brawalia can really sing out in such a glorious way. Begonias are fantastic to add that splash and pop of color. And you could get creative and maybe have a hanging basket in your woodland garden that's just spilling over with Terrenia. But Primula vulgaris and Primula japonica have these romantic early spring blooms that can add so much joy in those shadier borders. And then another biennial that I absolutely love, probably one of my favorite plants of all time, is the foxglove. Just so perfect for a woodland setting. They are charming, cottagey, romantic. The pollinators just love them. The butterflies, bumblebees, honeybees, all the bees, hummingbirds just love the foxgloves. They self-seed beautifully for us, and it's just such a charming one to grow in a woodland setting. These beautiful towers of flower that last for several months. And we get those wild foxgloves, those beautiful soft yellow grandiflora foxgloves all throughout our woodland. So just spreading those seeds in the autumn into areas of the woodland that we want to establish as part of that beautiful, colorful, painterly effect with the foxgloves is a wonderful way of doing it. Wait till the seed pods dry, and then just take them out there with gloves on, since every part of the foxglove is poisonous. But just take it out there and just shake those seeds out through the area that you want, and then they'll just spring up everywhere. But they will spring up everywhere just anyway, because of the nature of having thousands and thousands of seed in each one of those pods. And then another truly stunning woodland plant is the astilbe. Astilbes are really happy in our area. They absolutely thrive. They do spread pretty freely, so if you wanted to keep them in a more contained space, you might just want to consider having a border that is, more beneficial for that, where they're a little bit more restrained. But they are just so stunning. I want them to be everywhere, particularly this beautiful purple-spired one that comes up in August for us. It's really a beautiful ferny-like ground cover, and then those spires just come up beautifully. That one does like a little bit more water in the soil. But that being said, we have them all throughout the woodland and they are thriving. And we have so many trees. So that does show that they are a little bit more resilient in our area. It's probably because we do get a lot of winters, like a lot of snow in the winter, and then we get a lot of rain throughout the season. So even though we have so many thirsty trees, we are probably getting enough rain for them to get what they need, get their fill. And then you have things like aquiledias. Aquiledias or columbines are just so whimsical and romantic. They are just the most beautiful butterfly-shaped flowers. They look like, fairies dancing in the wind. They're gorgeous, and they have so many interesting bicolors. And we have several areas. I'm looking out in the garden as we speak, and there's this area where we have some pink and creamy white columbines, and then another area where we have some blue and white columbines, but they are just beautiful. They will spread freely in some areas, not so much in our area, but they are really, really gorgeous. The wild ones do seem to spread, but the store-bought ones seem to stay pretty contained for us. But it's just fun to have that color. So if you have these kind of different shapes and colors of foliage, maybe a really beautiful fountain-like fern with maybe some Brunnera, heart-shaped Brunnera, and then larger broad-leaved hostas next to that with some Hakonakloa, Japanese forest grass, maybe the areola variety, just sort of puddling underneath. kind of creating a yellow, soft yellow river underneath. And then just sprinkling some beautiful color in there, whether that's with annuals, biennials, or perennial flowers. And then for some brighter foliage impact, you can use heucheras. Heucheras offer a beautiful, just vibrant punch of color. I love the Shanghai heuchera. It's a little bit on the darker side, but that one has like sort of a purpley color and then a silver overlay on it. And it just, the veining really pops. It's really beautiful. The underside of the leaves are sort of a burgundy color. It's just a really gorgeous heuchera. But there are beautiful red heucheras that you can find. We have several of those in our garden. Tiarellas are fantastic. They offer that spring bloom that lasts for so long. It's one of our longest flowering early perennials, and it has stood up so beautifully to this deluge of rain that we've been getting that's been taking down so many of our other flowers. And those have just stood up, even though they're so small and dainty and they look like they couldn't stand a breath of air, let alone this outpouring of rain. But they are just so, so stunning. That's another one. And you can get some with beautiful leaves that have a softer green on the interior or silvery color, and then broaden out to a deeper, richer green. Really, really beautiful. You could do heucherellas, which is a combination of the tiarella and the heuchera, so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. The heuchera blooms are so gorgeous. I absolutely love them. The spearmint heuchera has a silvery green leaf and then this beautiful, like hot pink, vibrant spires. Very ethereal flowers. Just gorgeous. You could also do things like a carex. You could do coleus. Coleus is an annual. They have so many different vibrant, rich foliage colors that you could add into your borders just to have those pops of color and interest, particularly if you have a woodland garden that's up a hill, like we have, just spreading those throughout just so that your eye kind of keeps going as if it goes on forever. And now planting amongst roots and in dry shade, and a few tips on how to do it to best effect. So shade beneath trees often comes with thirsty roots and lean soil, but don't let this deter you because there are things that you can do to encourage your plants and also to help them along the way. So think like a forest. Choose resilient companions and then really plant in pockets of compost or leaf mold, which is perfect for this kind of shady garden because it mimics the natural flow and rhythm and soil of a woodland. As those trees rot down over time, it's creating a layer of leaf mold, right? So if we just add on to that and encourage more of that, that's a fantastic way of mulching your woodland borders. And also layering your mulch so that you have these different levels. So maybe, a layer of compost, a layer of your soil, and then having leaf mold on the top is a wonderful way to mimic the way that the woodland floor naturally composes the soil. And my next tip for dry shade is to water deeply, but infrequently. And this really trains your plants to really reach down with their roots, to anchor in, and also to find that water deeper down. And next up for your romantic woodland garden, it's time to add whimsy. We want a whimsical garden, so let's add some whimsy into this space. And because these areas can be a little bit darker, it's nice to add pops of brighter pieces to really allow them to stand out in a border, highlighting the features of whatever you're putting in. So for example, if you're putting in an urn in a dark corner, having it be a beautiful, bright or light color is a fantastic way of really highlighting it, putting it on display. Even if you're tucking it back away, it's going to stand out in those darker corners. Whereas if you put something that's a little bit darker, it's going to completely fade away and disappear. And this part is really where your spirit enters the garden. An old teacup turned into a bird bath, a crooked gate that's leading into a meandering woodland path, a piece of statuary, maybe a woodland nymph that's just sort of rising above the ferns. I mean, there's something about that weaving of wild and cultivated that makes a woodland garden feel so special. And this is really where you can personalize it and make it your own. Do you love a little fairy garden? That would be perfect for a little woodland dell. Do you love having gorgeous, romantic, kind of classical statuary? That's fantastic for a woodland garden. There are beautiful things that can climb up it. Even your wild or native species might be climbing up it. So we're not only adding whimsical and personal touches, we're also inviting nature in. So these garden spaces, they're not pristine. They're not perfectly clipped to within an inch of their life. They're really that call to nature, saying it's okay that we're here together. So this is where, birds freely nest. This is where foxes might come through. We have a family of foxes that just is so beautiful. We've seen their babies and they just come through the garden. This is where chipmunks love to burrow and squirrels like to dance among the highest of the treetops. It's such a magical space. Hummingbirds like to rest and bumblebees like to sleep in the flowers. So with that comes all of the things of life in a garden. And we just have to be a little bit more relaxed, a little bit looser in order to feel that sense of peace and serenity that a woodland garden can provide. When we're going through maybe our veggie patch, let's say, or a formal garden, there is this call for structure. In a formal garden, a French garden, let's say, that precision, that specificity, those beautiful lines, the vistas that you're creating so intentionally, those sort of start to soften in a woodland garden. You can still have a beautiful formal woodland garden for sure. You could create something like that, an amalgamation, but the natural rhythm of a woodland garden is one that ebbs and flows. It's really about being part of the season, paying attention to what's happening, what birds and wildlife are coming in with each passing month. It's just a very special, very, very magical place where you are in collaboration with nature. So that might mean that maybe you're leaving a stack of logs in the background so that hedgehogs or chipmunks can find a cozy little nesting spot. Maybe you're creating a little brush pile for hummingbirds and other beautiful winged friends to gather for their nests. Maybe you're even putting out hummingbird nests or baskets, or leaving birch branches and things like that so that they can peel off the white birch and create their beautiful little thimble-sized nests. So maybe that means that you want to take an old barrel and create a little sunken pond. Maybe this means that you want to put out a bird bath for cardinals to take a little soak in. Maybe it means that you just leave parts of the garden for the wild and you create a space that's intermingled. But generally, this is an opportunity for you to let the wild in and to get closer to these beautiful woodland friends. Seasonal moments. Spring, this time of year, brings primroses and pulmonaria, brunnera and epimediums. Summer welcomes in the foxgloves with their beautiful spires alongside the shorter spires of the astilbes. Autumn scatters those leaves like golden confetti, and even winter brings in the berries and the gorgeous shapes of the trunks. A woodland garden really needs very little pruning, very little trimming. It's more about kind of gently guiding your plants, deadheading where you need to, composting generously, and really stepping lightly. Okay, so we have this beautiful woodland garden with this crumbling, romantic old stone wall. It's like this beautiful woodland garden in the ruins. So right off the bat, my husband chose this one for us. So I'm just taking it all in. We have these very architectural trees. There's that mist that I talked about, just sort of whispering its way through the woods. It's really gorgeous. We don't have the leaves fully on the trees yet, so pretty early on. But we're gonna design it as if this is in its full flush. And with this program, we're going to be putting things in that might not be flowering at the same time necessarily. We might put in some early spring bloomers with some that bloom a little bit later. But typically, most of these shade lovers will bloom earlier in the season, in the springtime, a lot of them. Your pulmonarias, your brunneras, your stilbees, things like that. So let's jump right in. I think I want to keep this with just the main trees, not too many shrubs or smaller statured trees, but I think I do want to put in one dogwood, one cornice. So let's add that in and let's do a really beautiful structural dogwood. Dogwoods are also native to the Northeast. We have some wild dogwoods growing and they're really beautiful. So I think I want to do one that looks very wild and that just sort of looks like it's just natural here. Something that has that tiered branch effect. A lot of our native dogwoods here have that effect and it just looks so magical. It looks like there's a little bit of a break in the trees here, so we'll put that one there. You just want to make sure that when you're planting up any garden that you're giving the plants what they want. And some of these shrubs are going to do better if they have a few little moments of sunlight, so it's not deep full shade. Let's put you right there. And I think to balance it out, I might do one over here as well. The same one, just a little bit larger here in the front. So kind of have that coming out of this side. Yeah, I think that'll look really nice. Now let's start to add some of our gorgeous perennials. I want to start with just a few on the right-hand side, and I'm going to do them in swathes. We'll start with Brunnera, one of my favorites, and we'll do it in bloom. This is the Jack Frost. It's just stunning. There's just something so magical about woodland plants. I think if you have a cottage garden or a cottage style and you're putting in woodland plants, it's such a perfect marriage. All right, I like that. So a little cluster of those there, kind of closer to us. And then I want to add in some structure now. I want to see if we can find sort of an old English bench. Something that looks weathered. Oh, we should definitely do something in that wall. All right. I think something about having those stones in place makes me want to put in some kind of a stone piece of statuary or furniture, but I don't want it. But none of these are quite right. I would like more of a darker kind of gray stone instead of the sandstone color, but we might have to work with what we have here. Yeah, that's all right. So we'll do this, but let's just imagine together. Let's suspend disbelief here and imagine that this is a really beautiful one that matches that. All right, now let's find something for this wall. I think this wall just needs something ornamental, something structural. Okay, I found more of a gray stone bench and I added these little stone steps here that are going to kind of be hidden from the bottom. But I like this idea that you're kind of coming into this space, that there's sort of an introduction into this space, that this angle that we're looking at it from is the angle of the entrance of this garden. And then I'm going to try and find something to put on that back wall, even if it's not perfect, just something even as a placeholder that we can use. Slightly turned. This fleur-de-lis might be nice, but something like that, but just that feels a little bit more organic, crumbly would be nice to kind of go with these ancient walls kind of feel to it. All right, and that's a nice little bird bath to invite our bird friends in there. Okay, so that's some structure that we have there. And now instead of doing a paver pathway or anything like that, or bricks, we'll imagine that it's been tread so many times that those bricks are all gone, and we'll just sort of create the path in the blank spaces. So I'm going to invite in some other things. I think I definitely want to do one more shrub. I want to do a hydrangea, but I want to do a very woodland style, like a lace cap hydrangea, something, or an oak leaf, or a climber. A climbing hydrangea would be really pretty. They just look so ethereal and gorgeous. So we could do almost like a baby one, a little baby climbing hydrangea climbing up here behind our cornice. So it's climbing up that back wall, so eventually it'll be kind of all covered and it'll reach for the sun and it'll just create this really nice architectural interest there. I want to do a few really beautiful plants. Let's start with some epimediums. Yeah, let's do a few of the sulphuriums. It's a nice red foliage. Those are nice around the base of trees. And they have those beautiful bishop hats in the springtime. Gorgeous fairy-like sprays of flower. Usually creamy whites or pinks. There we go. So we'll do a few of those at the base of that tree. That looks nice, just like a nice bright pop. We'll do a few of these niveums, epimedium niveum or niveum. And let's say we pop these around the base of these other trees. So they have that gorgeous foliage throughout the year. And then in the springtime, typically they have these gorgeous sprays of fairy-like flowers. There we go. And these will bloom at the same time. All right. I think I want to add one more hydrangea. We'll do this, which looks like an oak leaf. Really beautiful. And have that just kind of spraying out from behind. This is going to be one that would not bloom at this time, but very, very beautiful. It wouldn't be blooming simultaneously with the cornice, but that'll give you that later interest and very pretty, really interesting. And I think having that behind the bench will be really nice. I want to add in some pulmonaria, lungwort, and we'll do this pink one here. I just love the leaves of the lungwort. I think they provide such interesting kind of structure to them. So we'll put those there during the season. And I'll kind of flank that's the stairs with those. These Brenner need to be much smaller to scale. I think a deep purple pulmonaria kind of right here next to our Brenner would be nice. Beautiful. I want to put some hostas in here. And I think I want to do some really nice blue foliage for the hostas. And I think I'd like to have those maybe on either side of this stone bench. I don't want anything to stand out too much. I don't want things to feel too plunked. I want things to feel like they would just end up there. And then I really want to do some beautiful ferns. Yeah, like ostrich ferns. Maidenhair ferns are my favorite. I definitely want some of these that have these beautiful plumes. Just this gorgeous fountains of interest floating up. Let's add some beautiful maidenhair fern. Grows wild here and it's just beautiful. Let's add some of that over here. It kind of spills. You know, it's usually very wide and it kind of spills. It's very pretty. I like the difference of that foliage texture, just very sprawled out. And those ferns really do, they gleam in the darker corners of a woodland garden. So here in Vermont we have asters, native asters, and they're in the woodlands. They grow profusely on our property. They come up in about August. That would be beautiful to kind of pepper in with our oak leaf hydrangea, which would be in bloom at the same time. But I'm not seeing any that are they kind of come up in these individual branches. A lot of these seem a little bit thicker, which kind of takes away the look that I'm going for. Like this says New England Astra, but it's very close together. So we'll skip out on that. Great. Let's do some Japanese anemones, and we'll pop those in throughout. Now, you know what? If we wanted to do this without those pulmonaria and kind of keep it softer colors, I actually think that would be really, really pretty as well. And we're going to add some of this beautiful cranesbill, this geranium. And we'll do another geranium, and we'll have that A little drift here. Let's add some of this Canadian columbine. This is the one that we have here. We're very close to Canada, so a lot of their natives grow wild here, like the Canadian windflower and this columbine. So this has a richer color, and it has that really kind of wispy foliage and very ephemeral, ethereal looking flowers that just kind of float on the breeze. Yeah, I think it's looking really nice. And you can kind of see the trajectory of the path kind of winding around the back of that tree, but let's emphasize it. Now I just want to add in some of these primulas. I think they're very beautiful, and I think they have a really interesting look in the garden. They're just such a fun spot in the spring garden. And you know what? Most of these are going to be blooming together, so that's fun. I really like that. I think it would be really fun and very elegant and elevated to do all white flowers in here. Like if they had a white geranium, a cranesbill. But let's add some more white flowers. Let's add some trilliums. Let's see if they have any. Yeah, not very likely. No trilliums. Trilliums are so beautiful. They grow wild here as well, and they are just so beautiful. Such an interesting shape. All right, let's add our astilbes in, and we'll add some that we can sort of count on for some of those blooms later on. So some astilbes are great because you can get varieties that'll kind of cover you throughout the year. They'll kind of bloom throughout, which is really fun. We have a couple of varieties that are white and kind of creamy, almost like a soft pale yellow. And those bloom early in the spring for us. And then we have some that are purple, kind of like a lavender purple, and they bloom in about August. That's nice. I think a moon garden is so perfect for a woodland theme. So if you wanted to do a moon garden and you're just wondering if it'll work in your space or how that'll go, I would highly recommend it if you're starting a woodland garden and you've always wanted to do a moon garden, put those together because that would be so fun. And then I'm going to do this heart and soul pink. It's a little more pink than our astilbes are, but that's the vibe of them for sure. Is that kind of pinky purple. Very beautiful. I'm going to pop those back. I do want to add some ajuga just because it's right out the window here and it looks so pretty. But I'm not sure how this will look. Let's see. Little swathe of ajuga right there. So we're just leaving those spaces open that we want to have open. Really using that concept of no space, empty space, blank space. That's used a lot in Japanese garden design. Kind of looking at the empty spaces and creating those as part of the feel of the garden, using those as kind of a guide. It's kind of like you're filling in and working with the empty spaces. Anyway, but I think that can be a fun way to sort of think about this. And now I want to come in with foxgloves, saving the best for last. I think I'm going to do white foxgloves, and I really want them to just kind of tower over. I want them to feel very abundant, freckled throughout. I'm going to do some of these purple ones. Common pink, which look like a gloxiniflora foxglove. Violet colored foxglove. This looks very much like, kind of like the lavender foxgloves that we have here that I love to grow. There we go. I love the spires of flower of those foxgloves. So fun. I mean, this is a very full garden. Very full, very romantic. Let's imagine that these ones are coming out over here on this end there. All right, let me take a look. I think that's really nice. I think I might want to add some ground cover right here. Let's add some tiarellas. You got tiarellas and heucheras. These don't look that fun from this picture. In person, they're so amazing. I don't love the fleur-de-lis on that, but you get the idea of that, just sort of a placeholder. So I think it's a really soft, whimsical, romantic space. There are clusters and swathes of plants, but then also just a few freckled throughout as well. combination of those can be really, really fun. A few anchoring plants, you know, the cornice, obviously the trees and the hardscape that's in place, the old ruins. Gosh, what a dream. Just provide that. But then we added the hydrangea and just lots of beautiful woodland plants that are just going to look so at home and peaceful and right in this space. And it looks full and it looks vibrant, but when you're there, it'll just feel peaceful and together and cohesive, and you can sort of still see and peek through beyond. I like the tiered kind of wedding cake look of that cornice, so you can still see those misty woods beyond. But yeah, very, very beautiful. And then when you're sitting on the bench, you're kind of enclosed with the hydrangea behind you, and yeah, very nice. You can have a little intimate conversation on the stone bench in this romantic woodland setting. Let's make this. Let's make this on our property somewhere. Okay, I think that's all. Your woodland sanctuary awaits. A woodland garden isn't just a place, it's a feeling of stillness, of softness, and of wonder. And it begins with a single plant, a foxglove here, a fern there. Let this little space become a poem. One dainty flower, one leaf, one breath of shade at a time. Thank you so much for joining me. Please do like this video if you like this kind of garden design content and inspiration. And until next time, be well, stay curious, and may your garden always bring you home. Bye-bye.